Hello Baker Finance students. We are now in week 2, and this week you'll be reading chapters 4, 5, and 6. These chapters are very quantitative in nature, so just when you read them slowly and kind of make sure you understand the examples and how all the math is tied together. Chapter 4 ties into looking at ratio analysis, how we gather information from the balance sheet, the income statement, to look at such ratios as profitability ratios, liquidity ratios, management effectiveness. And the forum discussion this week ties in that a little bit. I'm going to ask you to look at a couple ratios, but what you're going to do in the forum discussion is actually select which company you want to research for your project. And this is a first come, first served basis. So if somebody wanted to select Starbucks, the first person that's posted Starbucks, that's the company that you'll get to research, and that way I don't have multiple students doing the same company. So again, when you pick a company, make sure it's a company that is a publicly traded company that you're going to be able to easily find information for. Remember too that the Baker Collins Library, you have that resource online, and if you go under business and subject guides, there's a lot of information that will help you on this type of project too. But anyway, I'll provide a link out there for Yahoo Finance, and just follow the forum discussion, you'll do fine. But Chapter 5 is kind of the meat and potatoes of this week. It's really critical to understand these time value and money calculations. Again, remember that if you understand at least 4 out of the 5 values, then I can solve for that 5th value. And I provided some videos out there as an example. You can follow the textbook examples too, whether it's present value, future value, payment, number of periods, rate of return, calculating a future value annuity or present value annuity. These are going to be beneficial tools. They're going to help us and make financial decisions. And then in Chapter 6, we have a little bit about variance and standard deviation. Variance is something that we look at the absolute value differences between a mean, and a lot of times in finance this is tied to a probability. But with returns in markets, they can be quite variable. As we've seen in the stock market, we've had really high returns, but that's not always been the case. There's been low years, but kind of the net or average over years, you probably can say it's about 10%, but there could be a lot of variability either way. And in order to find a standard deviation, you have to calculate that variance first, and think of this square root symbol. As I take the square root of that variance, well, that's standard deviation. It might be for a stock market, it could be a standard deviation of 10%, which means that plus or minus 10%, 68% of the time, it can go either direction. So another important thing in that chapter is also the understanding of beta. I'll ask you to talk about that in your forum discussion. But beta is also a measure of risk, because what this leads up to is how do we find an appropriate rate of return for our investors. So with beta, you're looking at your stock as the dependent variable and the market as the independent variable. Now, last week we looked at that yield curve. It looked at changes to the relationship with the yield curve in the S&P 500. But now what we're kind of saying is that here's the S&P 500 that moves freely, that's an independent variable, and then I have my company's returns. So if I have a beta equal to 2, that says, if the market is up 10%, my stock's up 20%. Or if the market is down 10%, my stock's down 20%. So it means a lot more variability. But if you had a beta equal to 0.5, it'd be less variability. It'd say if the market's up 10%, my stock's up 5%. If the market's down 10%, my stock's down 5%. And again, this is based off of just a brief period of time. But it is a way to help investors kind of measure risk based on past performance, maybe the past 6 months. And I've included an example out there in the video too, and they provide examples in the book too. Well, everybody's doing a great job. Continue the good job with the forum discussions. Do send me an email or and post questions in forum discussion if it's related to the forum discussion topic. But otherwise, I will talk to you online, and have a great week. And we've already wrapped up week 1, so we're moving right along. So take care, everybody. Have a great week.